My brother fired me 14 minutes after he was named CEO, claiming I lacked vision while he sipped a $400 scotch I had personally bought for the office inventory. He thought he was discarding a burnout operations manager who annoyed him with budget spreadsheets. He didn't realize he was actually standing on land that I owned, inside a building I controlled, planning a future he had already forfeited. He had the title, but I held the lease, and the clock was already ticking. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. The scotch was a Glengoyne 25-year, the kind that smells like sherry and old leather. I knew exactly how much it cost because I'd approved the invoice 3 months ago, categorizing it under client relations, even though I knew the only client who would ever taste it was Kieran's ego. He poured it slowly, letting the amber liquid hit the heavy crystal tumbler with a sound that was aggressively expensive. He didn't offer me a glass. He just stood there, leaning against the edge of the mahogany desk that had been our mother's until this morning, and swirled the liquid around, watching the vortex with a self-satisfied smirk that made my molars ache. "We need to talk about trajectory, Bridget," Kieran said. He was wearing a suit that cost more than my first car, a custom Italian cut that was slightly too tight across the shoulders, designed to make him look broad and imposing. It just made him look like he was trying too hard to stay inside his own skin. The board and I, well, mostly me, but the board agrees. We feel that Coral Cove needs a new aesthetic, a new energy. I stood by the door, holding a clipboard that contained the HVAC maintenance schedule for the Santa Monica property. I'd walked in here to tell him that the cooling tower on the roof was vibrating at a frequency that suggested catastrophic bearing failure within 48 hours. Instead, I was getting a lecture on energy from a man whose only contribution to the company so far had been changing our font to sans serif. "Trajectory," I repeated, my voice flat. I didn't move. I didn't fidget. I'd learned stillness from negotiating with union reps and health inspectors. "Is that what we're calling it?" "It's about synergy," he said, using the word like a weapon. He took a sip of the scotch, wincing slightly. He didn't actually like whiskey, he just liked the idea of being a man who drank whiskey. "You've done a adequate job, Bridget. Really. No one disputes that you're good at the plumbing, the nuts and bolts, but we're pivoting to a lifestyle brand. We need visionaries, not mechanics." He set the glass down on a coaster. "We're letting you go. Effective immediately." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, pressurized, like the air in a boiler room before a seal blows. I looked at him, really looked at him, my younger brother, the boy I'd helped with algebra homework, the man who had spent the last 5 years networking in Aspen and Miami while I was literally scrubbing grout in our flagship lobby at 3 a.m. because a VIP guest had spilled red wine. "You're firing me," I said, the words tasting like copper, 14 minutes into your tenure as CEO. "It's a strategic realignment," he corrected, checking his watch, a Patek Philippe our mother gave him for graduating MBA school. A graduation I attended while answering emails about a bedbug scare in Tahoe. "HR has your severance package. It's generous, 6 months pay. We want this to be amicable. You can take some time, find yourself. Maybe open a bakery or something. You always liked baking." "I haven't baked a damn thing since 2009. He walked around the desk, sitting in the high-backed leather chair that still held the indentation of our mother's spine. He looked small in it. "Security will escort you out in 20 minutes. I need the office cleared for a video conference with the Singapore investors at 2. He picked up a pen, my pen actually, a heavy brass tactical pen I kept for site visits, and started twirling it, signaling the conversation was over. He looked bored. He looked relieved. He had no idea. 20 minutes is a long time when you're dismantling your life, but it's not enough time to process the sheer audacity of being erased. My office wasn't the corner suite with the ocean view. That was Kieran's now. My office was a converted storage room on the 3rd floor, sandwiched between the server room and the janitor's closet. It smelled faintly of ozone and lemon disinfectant. I pulled a cardboard box from under my desk and started tossing things in. Not carelessly, though. Methodically, because that's who I am. I'm the person who organizes the chaos. First went the framed photo of the groundbreaking ceremony for the Big Sur Resort. Everyone in the photo was smiling. Mom, Kieran, the mayor. I wasn't in the photo. I was behind the camera, taking the picture, because the professional photographer had gotten stuck in traffic and someone had to document the moment. Next went my Rolodex. Kieran thought Rolodexes were archaic. He lived on LinkedIn. He didn't understand that my Rolodex contained the personal cell phone number of the only plumber in California who could fix a commercial boiler on Thanksgiving Day, and the direct line to the health inspector who owed me a favor. Kieran appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame, sipping that scotch again. He was enjoying this. He wanted to see me break. He wanted tears. He wanted me to scream so he could call me hysterical to the board later. "Don't take the laptop," he said, pointing a manicured finger. "Company property, IP, and all that." "I know the protocol, Kieran," I said, not looking up. I reached into the back of my bottom drawer and pulled out a heavy, velvet-lined wooden box. "What's that?" he asked, suspicious. I opened it. Inside sat an antique brass geometer, a surveying tool my grandfather had used when he bought the very first plot of land Coral Cove was built on. It was heavy, cold, and precise. "Grandpa's junk?" Kieran sneered. "Leave it. Might look good on a shelf in the lobby. Heritage vibes." "It's personal property," I said, snapping the box shut. "Check the inventory logs from 2014. I put the geometer in the box on top of a stack of structural engineering reports I'd paid for out of my own pocket. I stood up, hoisting the box. It was heavy, but I didn't let my arms shake. I walked toward the door, forcing him to move out of my way. He didn't step back, he just pivoted, maintaining his dominance. "Hey," I said, pausing just as I crossed the threshold. "Good luck with the Santa Monica zoning renewal next month. The city council is particular about the drainage variance." For a split second, the smirk faltered. A tiny glitch in his software. His eyes darted to the left, the tell that he had no idea what I was talking about. He didn't know about the drainage variance. He probably didn't even know the zoning permit was expiring. "We have lawyers for that, Bridget," he scoffed, recovering his arrogance. "Go home. Relax. You look tired." "I am tired," I admitted, and for the first time, I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a structural engineer who knows exactly where the load-bearing wall is and knows exactly who just took a sledgehammer to it. "Goodbye, Kieran." I walked down the hallway, past the open-plan bullpen where 30 junior marketing associates pretended not to watch me. I kept my head up. I listened to the sound of my heels on the polished concrete. Click, click, click. A countdown. The next morning, I woke up at 5 a.m. I didn't set an alarm. My body was just wired to the rhythm of the resort business. For 17 years, 5 a.m. was when the night audit reports hit my inbox. It was when I checked the occupancy rates, the incident logs, and the revenue per available room, RevPAR, for all 6 properties. I rolled over and reached for my phone on the nightstand. My hand closed around the cool metal, and my thumb unlocked the screen before my brain had fully booted up. Muscle memory is a cruel thing. I tapped the mail icon. Nothing. I tapped the internal Slack channel. Account deactivated. I tapped the operational dashboard app. Login failed, contact administrator. I stared at the screen until the backlight timed out and went dark. It felt like a phantom limb. I could feel the vibrations of the hotel, the imaginary crisis at the Santa Monica pool, the linen shortage in Tahoe, the VIP complaint in Laguna. I could feel the weight of the problems I was supposed to be solving, but I had no way to reach them. The silence in my apartment was deafening. Usually my mornings were a cacophony of notifications and urgent texts from night managers. Now, the only sound was the hum of my refrigerator. I got up and walked to the kitchen. My feet felt heavy, dragging against the hardwood. I went through the motions of making coffee, grinding the beans, boiling the water, but I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. I took my mug out to the balcony. I live in a modest complex in Marina del Rey overlooking the channel. The sky was that bruised purple color before dawn. The air smelled of salt and diesel. In the distance, a massive container ship was slowly making its way out to sea. It was loaded with thousands of metal boxes, moving with an unstoppable, sluggish momentum. I watched it for a long time. That ship had a captain. It had a destination. It had a manifest. I had nothing. I sat there as the sun came up, watching the world wake up without me. Joggers ran on the path below. A garbage truck beeped as it reversed. The mechanisms of the city were churning along, completely indifferent to the fact that Bridget Hartwick, the woman who had single-handedly saved the Coral Cove brand from bankruptcy 3 times, was sitting in her pajamas, erased. I wasn't angry yet. That's the strange part. I was just numb. It was the shock of amputation. You don't feel the pain immediately. You just stare at the empty space where your arm used to be and wonder how you're going to tie your shoes. The numbness broke at 10:42 a.m. with a text message. It was from Sloan, the general manager of the Santa Monica property. Sloan was my best hire, a former Marine logistics officer who ran the resort like a Swiss watch. She was tough, fair, and loyal. Sloan, you need to know what's happening. The Optimize group just landed. It's a bloodbath. I stared at the phone. The Optimize group. I knew them. They were a boutique consulting firm run by a guy named Chad who wore loafers without socks and used the phrase low-hanging fruit unironically. Kieran had been trying to bring them in for years. Bridget, what are they doing? The typing bubbles appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. Sloan, they're cutting housekeeping by 30%. They said daily turndown service is an antiquated cost center. They're replacing the fresh orchids in the lobby with plastic succulents because maintenance costs are too high. Plastic, succulents, in a 5-star resort. I gripped the phone so hard the case creaked. Plastic succulents. The fresh orchids were my signature. They were subtle, but they signaled life, luxury, and care. Plastic meant dust. Plastic meant cheap. Sloan, Rosa is in my office crying. They told her that her seniority doesn't transfer to the new efficiency model, and she's being bumped down to on-call status. She's been here 14 years, Bridget. She needs the health insurance for her husband. I closed my eyes. Rosa. I could picture her perfectly. Small, fierce, with hands calloused from years of scrubbing marble. When my father died, Rosa was the one who brought me homemade tamales and sat with me in the linen closet while I cried so the staff wouldn't see. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to call Sloan, to tell her to cite the Union Local 11 contract, Section 4, Paragraph B, to tell her to threaten a walkout, to tell her to pull the guest satisfaction scores from 2019 when we tried reducing housekeeping and showed how it correlated to a 15% drop in return bookings. I typed out the response. Tell them to look at the rev. I stopped. My thumb hovered over the send button. I wasn't the VP of operations anymore. I was a civilian. If I helped them, I was helping Kieran. If I fixed this, he wouldn't feel the pain of his own stupidity. He would take credit for the solution I provided. I backspaced. I watched the cursor eat the words. Bridget, I'm so sorry, Sloan. I can't help you. You have to document everything. Protect yourself. It felt like betraying a family member. It felt cold and cruel. But I hit send. I put the phone face down on the table. I imagined Rosa crying. I imagined the plastic plants gathering dust. And for the first time since the firing, the numbness was replaced by a cold, hard knot of rage in the center of my chest. 3 days later, my mother invited me to lunch. She chose Bistro Lumiere, a pretentious French spot in Palo Alto where they serve salads that are 90% vertical and cost $28. It was neutral ground, or so she thought. Madeline Hartwick was already seated when I arrived. She looked impeccable, as always. A Chanel blazer, hair coiffed into a steel-gray helmet of authority, sipping sparkling water with a slice of lime. She didn't look like a mother waiting for her unemployed daughter. She looked like a chairman waiting for a board report. "You look rested," she lied as I sat down. "I'm unemployed, Mom. I have plenty of time to rest," I said, unfolding the linen napkin. "Let's skip the pleasantries. Why are we here?" She sighed, a sound that implied I was being difficult on purpose. "Kieran tells me you were hostile during the transition. He said you threatened him." "I didn't threaten him. I wished him luck." "Bridget, please. I know you're hurt, but you have to understand the position I was in. Kieran, he has a vision for the company that is global. You've always been so focused on the granular details." "The granular details are what keep the buildings from falling down," I said, signaling the waiter. "I'll have the steak frites, rare." Madeline swirled her water. "He's my son. He needs this chance to fly. I couldn't undermine him by overruling his first major decision. It would have neutered his authority." "So you neutered my career instead," I summarized. "To protect his ego. To protect the company's future," she snapped, her voice rising just enough to make the couple at the next table glance over. "He's bringing in new investors. He's expanding. You were holding us back with your caution." I ate a French fry. It was perfectly salted. "Okay, let's talk about the company's future, specifically the real estate portfolio." Madeline frowned. "What about it?" "You know how Grandma set up the land trusts in the 80s? I asked casually. "To protect the assets from liability? Of course, it's all in the corporate structure." "Not all of it," I corrected. 4 years ago, when the trust for the Santa Monica, Big Sur, and Laguna properties was expiring, the company didn't have the liquidity to renew the buy option. Kieran had spent the cash reserves on that failed glamping initiative in Joshua Tree. Madeline stiffened. "I remember. We found a third-party investor to hold the land leases until we capitalized." "You didn't find a third-party investor, Mom. I found one." I leaned forward. "I formed a trust. I liquidated my 401k. I took out a second mortgage on my condo. I bought the land." Madeline stopped moving. She stared at me, her eyes widening. "What?" "I own the land under the 3 flagship resorts," I said, my voice steady. "For the last 4 years, I've been leasing it back to Coral Cove for $1 a year, a family discount, to help the company, to help you." The waiter arrived with my steak. He set it down. Neither of us looked at him. "But I'm not family anymore," I continued, picking up my knife and fork. "I'm just a hostile former employee, so the $1 lease arrangement is over." "Bridget," she whispered. Her face had gone pale. "The leases expire in 11 days, I said, cutting into the meat. "I've already had my lawyers draft the renewal terms. We're moving to market rate, plus a 20% distress premium because of the operational instability." "Market rate?" she choked out. That's millions. It will wipe out the operating margin. It will bankrupt those properties." "It's about 1.5 million a month," I calculated, chewing thoughtfully. "Kieran wants to be a big businessman with big vision? Great, big businessmen pay rent. You can't do this, it's your inheritance too." "No, Mom, my inheritance was the job I spent 17 years doing. This is just business. Synergy, I think Kieran calls it." I took another bite. It was the best steak I had ever tasted. The adrenaline from lunch lasted about 6 hours before the anxiety set in. I had the leverage, yes, but leverage is only useful if you know where to apply the pressure. Kieran was reckless, but he wasn't suicidal. Why would he fire the only person who knew where the bodies were buried unless he had a backup plan? I needed eyes on the inside. Since my digital access was gone, I had to go analog. I called Ramona. Ramona wasn't in hospitality. She was a forensic accountant who worked for a firm that specialized in high net worth divorces. We'd met in a kickboxing class 5 years ago and bonded over our mutual hatred of people who didn't use turn signals. "Bridget," she answered on the first ring. "I saw the news on LinkedIn. Kieran is a trash human. Do you want me to key his Tesla? Because I know a guy." "I need something better than vandalism," I said, pacing my living room. "I need you to look at something for me. I have a hunch Kieran has been siphoning money. He's been taking these business trips to the Caymans for 2 years. He claims it's investor relations, but we don't have any investors in the Caymans." "Say no more. Send me what you have." I sent her a box of physical expense reports I'd saved, copies I'd made because Kieran's client dinners often included receipts from nightclubs that definitely didn't serve food. 2 days later, Ramona called me. "I found something. There's a shell company called Blue Horizon LLC. It's registered in Delaware, but the bank account is in the Caymans. Coral Cove has been paying consulting fees to it for 18 months. "I knew it," I said, feeling a rush of vindication. "He's embezzling. What is he buying? Real estate? Crypto?" "That's the thing," Ramona said. "I tracked a disbursement. It went to a luxury shipyard in Italy. Bridget, I think he's building a yacht." I stopped pacing. "A yacht? A yacht?" I repeated. "He's bankrupting the company to buy a boat?" "It tracks," Ramona said. "The payments match the deposit schedule for a custom 80-footer. Project Neptune is the memo line." I spent the next 24 hours obsessed with yachts. I researched Italian shipyards. I looked up specs. I built a mental case against him as a petty thief who was stealing from the family piggy bank to buy a floating toy. It felt small. It felt pathetic. I was ready to take this to the board. The CEO is stealing to buy a boat. It would be a scandal. It would get him fired. But it felt wrong. Kieran was vain, but he wasn't a sailor. He got seasick on the ferry to Sausalito. Why would he risk everything for a boat he couldn't use? I was chasing a ghost. I was wasting time looking at hull designs while the real threat was moving beneath the surface. My phone rang at 11:30 p.m. It was Ramona again. Her voice was different this time, sharper, faster. "Forget the boat," she said without preamble. "I was wrong, or rather, the memo line was a decoy." "What do you mean?" I dug deeper into Project Neptune. It's not a boat, it's a code name. The shipyard in Italy? It's owned by a holding company that also owns a commercial development firm. I sat up on the couch, pushing my laptop aside. "Ramona, speak English. Blue Horizon isn't buying a yacht. It's funding a startup, a hospitality startup." The room went cold. "A competitor?" "Not just a competitor," Ramona said. "A clone. I found a pitch deck on an unsecured server linked to the payments. It's called Kingdom Coast. The logo is a stylized crown, but the font? It's the exact same sans serif Kieran just forced on Coral Cove." "Send it to me," I commanded. The file hit my inbox a minute later. I opened it and my breath hitched. It was 40 pages of glossy, high-definition betrayal. Kingdom Coast, the future of California luxury. I scrolled. Page 3, target markets, Santa Monica, Big Sur, Laguna Beach, the exact locations of our flagship properties. Page 12, operational strategy, leveraging 15-plus years of proprietary data on high-net-worth coastal travelers. My data, the data I had collected, the guest preferences, the seasonal trends, the pricing elasticity models. Page 25, the opportunity, acquiring distressed assets from legacy brands unable to adapt to modern market demands. He's not just competing, I whispered to the empty room. He's cannibalizing. Ramona was still on the line. "Bridget?" "He's tanking Coral Cove on purpose," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "The plastic plants, the cuts to housekeeping, the consultants. He's driving down the value of the resort so he can buy them for pennies on the dollar under this new brand. He's not stealing money. He's stealing the entire company." That's evil," Ramona said. That's brilliant. He's using my land lease expiration to trigger the distress, I realized. He thinks he can force the board to sell when I jack up the rent, and his shell company will be the buyer. He had planned this. He had planned everything. The firing wasn't just about ego. He needed me gone because I was the only one who would have spotted the sabotage. I needed to know how deep the rot went. The pitch deck mentioned a world-class team assembled from industry leaders. If he was cloning the company, he needed the people who actually ran it. I knew Kieran's habits. If he was wooing people, he was doing it at The Drake, a steakhouse in downtown LA where the booths had high backs and the lighting was dim. I drove there on a Tuesday night. I didn't go inside. I parked my beat-up Volvo across the street, reclined the seat, and waited. At 7:15 p.m., a black SUV pulled up. Kieran got out. He looked nervous, checking his phone. Then the guests arrived. First was Tom, the head of maintenance for the entire southern region. Tom, who I had hired when he was fresh out of trade school. Tom, who had helped me sandbag the lobby during the floods of 2017. Next was Alicia, the director of guest experience. Then, and this one hurt the most, Marcus, the executive chef of our Michelin-starred restaurant in Big Sur. I watched them greet Kieran. There were handshakes. There were smiles. Kieran patted Tom on the back, a gesture that looked awkward and rehearsed. They walked inside. I sat in my car staring at the valet stand. I felt like I was watching my children leave with a kidnapper they knew. These were my people. I had trained them. I had fought for their raises. I had covered for them when they made mistakes. And now they were breaking bread with the man who had fired me. I realized then that loyalty wasn't a currency I could spend anymore. Kieran was buying them with equity in the new company. He was offering them a lifeboat off the ship he was actively sinking. I could have marched in there. I could have caused a scene. I could have screamed, "He's using you!" But I didn't. I started the car and drove away. If I was going to win this, I couldn't just save them. I had to beat him. And to beat him, I needed a bigger shark. Camilla Vance was the CEO of Panthalassa Group, the largest luxury resort conglomerate on the West Coast. She was known in the industry as the Orca. She didn't just acquire companies, she swallowed them whole. She had tried to hire me 3 times. I had said no 3 times out of family loyalty. I called her personal line at 9 a.m. She agreed to meet me at 11 C's. Not at her office, but at the end of the Manhattan Beach Pier. It was a windy day. The Pacific was choppy, gray, and angry. Camilla was leaning against the railing wearing a trench coat that cost more than my rent. She was smoking a slim cigarette, holding it against the wind. "Bridget Hartwick," she said as I approached. She didn't offer a handshake. "I heard you got flushed." "I prefer released into the wild," I said, standing next to her. "Semantics. You're out. Your brother is in, and the stock price is down 4% this week. Why are we here?" "I want to make a deal," I said. Camilla laughed. It was a dry sound like sandpaper. "You don't have a company, Bridget. You don't have a job. What could you possibly have that I want?" "I have the ground," I said. She stopped laughing. She turned to look at me, her eyes sharp and assessing. "Explain." "Kieran is sabotaging Coral Cove. He's driving it into the ground to buy the assets cheap for a new venture. He's going to propose a sale of the flagship properties within the month. And when he does, you're going to be the buyer, not him." "Why would I want his distressed assets?" "Because I own the land underneath them," I said. "And if you buy the buildings, I'll give you a 20-year lease at 10% below market rate. If Kieran buys them, or anyone else, the rent goes up 300% on day 1. Camilla took a drag of her cigarette, studying me. "You're willing to screw your own brother to get to me?" "He's not my brother right now," I said, watching the waves crash against the pylons below. "He's a liability, and I'm offering you the premier coastal portfolio in California for a discount, packaged with the operational expertise to fix the mess he's made. You come with the deal? I'm non-negotiable. VP of Coastal Operations, full autonomy, and I get to rehire everyone he fired. Camilla flicked her cigarette into the ocean. She watched it fall. "Bring me the proof," she said. "Prove he's self-dealing. Prove the sabotage. If you can do that, I'll write the check." I drove home feeling a surge of momentum. I had a plan. I had a backer. Now I just needed the smoking gun. Ramona had found the pitch deck, but that wasn't enough. I needed the recruitment contracts. I needed the emails where Kieran instructed the consultants to cut the budget. I needed the paper trail that linked Blue Horizon directly to Kieran's personal signature. I still had one backdoor into the system. A legacy VPN tunnel I had set up for the engineering team in 2018 to monitor the seismic sensors in Big Sur. It bypassed the main corporate server. I sat down at my desk, cracking my knuckles. I logged into the VPN. It connected. Access granted. I navigated to the shared drive. My heart was pounding. I found the folder labeled Executive Strategy Restricted. I double-clicked. Folder empty. I frowned. I refreshed the page. Folder empty. I tried the Personnel folder. Folder empty. A message popped up on the screen. System alert. Remote wipe initiated by admin, K. Hartwick. My stomach dropped. I watched, helpless, as the drive letters disappeared one by one. The engineering drive. The operations drive. The archive. He wasn't just firing people. He was scrubbing the history. The screen flickered, and then the connection died. Access denied. I sat back, staring at the black screen. He had wiped it. The evidence of the sabotage, the recruitment contracts, the budget cuts. It was all digital, and now it was gone. I had the accusation. I had the land. But without the proof of his fraud, the board would just see me as a bitter sister trying to blackmail the company with a rent hike. I needed something he couldn't delete. I needed ink. I needed paper. And I had no idea where to find it. I was staring at the black screen of my laptop, watching my reflection in the glass, when my phone buzzed on the coffee table. It wasn't a text. It was a LinkedIn notification. Kenna S. sent you a message. Kenna, Kieran's executive assistant. The girl who sat outside his office for 3 years, managing his calendar, ordering his lunch, and buying his girlfriend's birthday presents because he couldn't be bothered to remember the date. Kieran treated her like office furniture, necessary but invisible. He called her Kevin for the first 6 months. I opened the app. Kenna, I saw you leave last week. I just got fired yesterday. He said he needed to trim the fat and that an iPad could do my job. Are you free? I typed back immediately. Starbucks on Wilshire, 20 minutes. I arrived first. I ordered a black coffee and sat in the corner, facing the door. 10 minutes later, Kenna walked in. She looked terrified. She was clutching a thick, heavy tote bag to her chest like it contained a bomb. She wore oversized sunglasses and kept checking over her shoulder. "Bridget," she breathed, sliding into the chair opposite me. She didn't order anything. She just dropped the bag onto the floor between her feet and kicked it toward me. "He's a monster." "I know," I said gently. "What happened?" "He told me my severance was contingent on signing an NDA," she whispered, leaning over the table. Her hands were shaking, but he didn't sign the severance agreement yet. He said he'd get to it when he had time. So I didn't sign the NDA either. "Smart," I said. "What's in the bag, Kenna?" She looked around the coffee shop. A barista was grinding beans. A guy in a suit was yelling into his AirPods. No one was watching us. "He thinks everything is digital," Kenna said, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and rage. "He thinks because he wiped the servers, there's no proof. But he's lazy, Bridget. He hates reading on screens. He makes me print everything for him to sign, and then he tells me to shred it." She nudged the bag with her foot again. "I didn't shred it," she said. "I kept a cover-your-ass binder. Every time he made me book a flight to the Caymans on the company card, I kept the receipt. Every time he signed a contract with a vendor for Kingdom Coast, I kept the duplicate." I reached down and pulled the bag onto my lap. It was heavy. I opened the top. Inside was a 3-inch binder, bursting with paper. "The recruitment contracts?" I asked, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Signed in wet ink," Kenna nodded. "Alicia, Tom, Marcus, they're all in there, along with the IP transfer agreements where he explicitly lists Coral Cove guest data as an asset he's contributing to the new company." I looked at her, really looked at her. She wasn't just a scorned assistant. She was the librarian of his destruction. "Why?" I asked. "Because he threw a stapler at me last Tuesday," she said, her voice hardening. "And because you remembered my dog's name. You're the only one who ever asked." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You just saved the company, Kenna." "No," she said, standing up and putting her sunglasses back on. "I just want to watch him burn." I was driving back to my apartment, the heavy tote bag buckled into the passenger seat like a VIP, when the Bluetooth in my Volvo chimed. Incoming call. Malcolm Reed. Malcolm was the only member of the Coral Cove board who actually understood the hospitality business. The others were finance guys or friends of my mother. Malcolm was an old-school hotelier who had started as a bellhop in 1978. "Bridget!" His voice boomed over the speakers. He sounded tired. "I'm not supposed to be calling you." "Then hang up, Malcolm," I said, keeping my eyes on the 405 traffic. "I can't. Your brother... He's proposing something at the board meeting next Tuesday. He wants to sell the Big Sur and Laguna properties." "Let me guess," I said, merging lanes. "He says they're underperforming. He says the legacy costs are too high. He suggests a quick sale to a blind trust to stop the bleeding." There was a silence on the line. "How do you know that?" "Because he's the one creating the bleeding, Malcolm." "He has a valuation report," Malcolm continued, sounding troubled. "It claims the properties are worth 40% less than they were last year. He says we need to liquidate to recapitalize the brand vision. The buyer is an entity called Blue Horizon. He says they're a European pension fund." "Ask him about the permits," I said. "What?" "In the meeting. Ask him if he's filed any development permits in Santa Monica, Big Sur, or Laguna under any other entity in the last 12 months. Bridget, what is going on? If you have information..." "I can't give it to you over the phone, Malcolm. If I tell you now, he'll have time to spin it. He'll fabricate an email, he'll bribe someone. I need him to lie to the board's face. I need you to see it." "He's your brother," Malcolm said softly. "He's a cancer," I corrected. "And on Tuesday, I'm going to cut him out." "Can you get me into the building?" "Security has your photo on the do not admit list. Kieran put it there yesterday." "I don't need a badge," I said, patting the tote bag next to me. "I just need you to open the door when I knock." "If you're wrong about this, Bridget, if this is just vengeance, you'll never work in this town again." "I know," I said. "See you Tuesday." That night, I met Sloan and Tom at Penny's Diner in Culver City. It was 11:30 p.m. The place smelled of bacon grease and stale coffee. We huddled in a back booth, the vinyl cracked and taped over with duct tape. Sloan looked exhausted. Her eyes were red-rimmed. Tom, usually the stoic maintenance chief, was shredding a paper napkin into tiny, nervous confetti piles. "The AC in the Santa Monica ballroom is down," Tom said without saying hello. "The compressor seized an hour ago. We have a wedding there on Saturday. 200 guests. If I don't order the part overnight, the bride is going to melt." "Don't order it," I said. Tom stopped shredding. He looked at me like I had just suggested he kick a puppy. "What?" "Don't order the part," I repeated. I took a sip of the diner coffee. It was terrible. "Let the room get hot." "Bridget," Sloan hissed. "That's sabotage. That's professional suicide. These are our guests. We promised them..." "They aren't our guests right now," I interrupted, my voice low and intense. "They are casualties. Listen to me. Kieran is trying to tank the value. If you fix the AC, you are helping him hide the damage. If you smooth over the cracks, the board won't see that the foundation is rotting." So we just let it burn? Sloane asked, her voice cracking. I have to look that bride in the eye. You tell her the truth, I said. You tell her that the new management cut the preventative maintenance budget. You give her the corporate complaints number. You let her write a 1-star review. This goes against everything you taught us, Tom said quietly. You taught us that the guest experience is sacred. I taught you to protect the house, I said. Right now, the house is infested with termites. You don't paint over termites, Tom. You let the wall fall down so you can expose the rot. I reached into my purse and pulled out 2 envelopes. This is for your legal fees if he tries to fire you for incompetence. But he won't. He needs you to sign those contracts for Kingdom Coast. Has he offered them yet? Sloane nodded slowly. Yesterday, equity points, a signing bonus. Take the meeting, I said. Stall him. Tell him you need to review the non-compete. Just buy me 4 days. Sloane looked at the envelope, then at me. She looked sick. I hate this. I know, I said. I hate it too. But on Tuesday, I'm going to end it. Until then, let the ballroom sweat. 3 weeks later, on a Monday morning, the article dropped. I was sitting on my balcony watching the marine layer burn off when my Google alert pinged. It was Hospitality Weekly, the Bible of the industry. Headline: Coral Cove in crisis, inside the collapse of a California icon. I clicked the link. The photo was brutal. A close-up of the dead brown landscaping at our Laguna property, juxtaposed with a blurry shot of a plastic succulent gathering dust in the lobby. I read the text. It was scathing. Sources report a catastrophic decline in service standards following the ousting of longtime operations VP Bridget Hartwick. Guest complaints have spiked 200%. Maintenance deferrals are rampant. Morale is reportedly at an all-time low, with key staff describing a culture of fear and frugality instilled by new CEO Kieran Hartwick. It went on to mention rumors of a fire sale of assets. My phone rang instantly. It was Madeline. Did you do this? She demanded. No hello. No, how are you? Just accusation. Did I do what, Mother? The article. Kieran is furious. He says you leaked internal memos to the press. He says you're waging a smear campaign. I didn't leak anything, I said calmly. The industry has eyes, Mom. You can't replace fresh orchids with plastic and expect Hospitality Weekly not to notice. You can't turn off the AC at a wedding and expect people not to talk. He's trying to save the company, she cried. He's under so much pressure. Why can't you support him? Why do you have to be so vindictive? I'm reading the same article you are, I said. It says the stock is down another 8% this morning. Is that my fault too? He's going to sue you, she warned. He's calling the lawyers right now. Tell him to save the billable hours, I said. I'll see him tomorrow. Tomorrow? You're not coming to the board meeting. You're banned. I guess we'll see about that, I said and hung up. I looked back at the article. I felt a pang of sorrow for the brand I loved, but it was quickly replaced by resolve. The world finally saw what I saw. The facade was gone. The night before the meeting, my apartment looked like a war room. I had cleared off my dining table. On the left was the red folder. This contained the land trust documents, the lease expiration notices, and the new rent appraisals. It was the financial nuclear option. On the right was the black binder, Kenna's binder. I had spent hours organizing it, flagging the most damning pages with yellow sticky notes. Tab 1, the pitch deck. Tab 2, the shell company bank statements. Tab 3, the poaching contracts. Tab 4, the IP transfer logs. I picked up the hole puncher, crunch. I punched a copy of Kieran's expense report showing a $12,000 dinner in Miami the same week he denied the budget for new linens in Tahoe. Crunch. I was precise. I was methodical. I was terrified. I walked over to my bookshelf and picked up a framed photo from 1995. It was me and Kieran on the beach in Santa Monica. I was 12, he was 8. I was holding his hand, leading him toward the water. He looked scared of the waves. I was protecting him. I had spent my whole life leading him to the water, making sure he didn't drown and letting him think he was swimming. I took the photo out of the frame. I looked at his little face. "You grew up into a shark," I whispered. I didn't burn it. That would be too dramatic, too cinematic. Instead, I turned it over and wrote the date on the back. The day I stopped being a sister. I put the photo in a drawer, face down. Then I went back to the table, closed the folders, and packed them into my leather briefcase. It clicked shut with a sound like a pistol cocking. I checked my watch. 10 p.m. 10 hours until the execution. Tuesday morning, 9:58 a.m. I wore my site visit suit, charcoal gray, sensible heels, no jewelry except my watch. I wasn't there to charm anyone. I was there to inspect the damage. I walked into the lobby of Coral Cove headquarters. The receptionist, a new girl I didn't recognize, looked up. "Can I help you?" "I'm here for the board meeting," I said, not breaking stride. "Do you have a pass? I don't see your name on the—" I walked past her to the elevators. I swiped my old badge. It blinked red. Access denied. I didn't panic. I pulled out my phone and texted Malcolm. "Lobby." 30 seconds later, the elevator doors pinged open. Malcolm was standing there. He looked pale. "He's already started," Malcolm whispered as I stepped inside. "He's pitching the sale. He's telling them Blue Horizon offered cash." "Let's go," I said. We rode up to the 12th floor in silence. The doors opened. We walked down the hallway. I could hear Kieran's voice booming from the conference room. "A necessary evolution. By shedding the heavy assets, we become agile. We become a technology company that happens to offer hospitality." Malcolm pushed the double doors open. The room froze. Kieran was standing at the head of the table, a laser pointer in his hand. Madeline was to his right. The 10 other board members were slumped in their chairs, looking glazed. Kieran turned. His face went from smug to purple in a nanosecond. "What is she doing here?" he snapped. "Security! I said she was banned." "She has the floor," Malcolm said, walking to his seat. I invited her. "You can't invite her. This is a closed session." Kieran slammed his hand on the table. "Get out, Bridget. You're embarrassing yourself." I walked to the opposite end of the table. I didn't sit. I placed my briefcase on the mahogany surface. I unlatched it. Click, click. "I'm not here as an employee, Kieran," I said, my voice projecting clearly to the back of the room. "I'm here as your landlord." "Landlord?" The CFO, a nervous man named Arthur, adjusted his glasses. "What are you talking about?" I slid the red folder down the center of the long table. It spun perfectly, coming to a stop right in front of Arthur. "Open it," I said. Arthur opened the folder. He scanned the first page. His eyes bulged. He flipped to the second page. He looked at Madeline, then back at the paper. This says the Land Trust for Santa Monica, Big Sur, and Laguna is owned by Hartwick Operations LLC? Arthur stammered. "That's me," I said. "I bought the land 4 years ago when the company was liquidity constrained. I leased it back to you for $1 a year to help the family." "I didn't know this," Kieran said, looking at his mother. "Mom, did you know this?" Madeline looked down at her hands. It was a temporary measure. "The lease expires on Friday," I announced. "And since I am no longer part of the family business, the family discount is revoked." I looked directly at Kieran. "The new rent is $1.8 million per month, retroactive to the start of the fiscal quarter if you fail to renew by midnight tonight. Or you can vacate the premises, but you can't take the buildings. They're attached to the land." "You're bluffing," Kieran sneered. "We'll sue you for extortion." "It's not extortion," Arthur whispered, his face turning gray. "It's a standard commercial lease expiry. If she raises the rent to market rate, our operating margin goes to negative 15%. We're insolvent immediately." "We can't sell the properties to Blue Horizon if we don't control the ground lease," Malcolm pointed out, leaning back in his chair with a grim satisfaction. The deal is dead, Kieran. I'll just buy the land from you, Kieran shouted, pointing the laser pointer at me like a weapon. We'll use the reserves. You don't have any reserves, I said calmly. You spent them. On what? Malcolm asked sharply. On this, I said, and I reached for the black binder. I opened the binder. I didn't slide this one. I held it up. Kieran has been building a competitor, I said. It's called Kingdom Coast. That's a lie, Kieran yelled. He started moving toward me. She's lying. She's jealous. Sit down, Kieran, Madeline said. Her voice was quiet, but it cracked like a whip. Kieran froze. I started passing out the copies I had made. Tab 1, I said. The pitch deck. You'll notice the target markets are identical to ours. You'll notice the proprietary data on page 12. That's our guest data, stolen. Board members were flipping pages now. The atmosphere in the room shifted from confusion to hostility. Tab 2, I continued. The bank statements for Blue Horizon. The entity Kieran just tried to convince you to sell our assets to? It's him. He's the beneficiary. He's trying to sell our resorts to himself for pennies on the dollar after driving down the value. This is preposterous, Kieran stammered, sweat visible on his forehead. That's standard industry exploration. I was testing the market. Tab 3, I said, delivering the final blow. Employment contracts signed by Kieran Hartwick, hiring our general managers, our executive chefs, and our maintenance directors for Kingdom Coast, dated 3 weeks ago. I held up the original page with his signature in blue ink. He's not just incompetent, I said to the board. He's a looter. He's gutting this company to build his own life raft, and he was going to leave you all on the sinking ship. Kieran looked at the binder. He recognized it. He recognized the font. He looked at me, and his eyes narrowed. Kenna, he hissed. That little... You shouldn't have fired her, Kieran, I said. And you definitely shouldn't have thrown a stapler at her. The silence in the boardroom was absolute. It was the silence of a predator realizing it is actually the prey. Arthur, the CFO, closed the red folder. This is a breach of fiduciary duty. It's fraud. It's criminal. I moved to remove Kieran Hartwick as CEO effective immediately, Malcolm said. Seconded, said the board member from the Teachers' Pension Fund. All in favor? Malcolm asked. Every hand went up, except one. We all looked at Madeline. She was staring at Kieran. She looked older than I had ever seen her. Her steel helmet hair seemed to have lost its shine. She looked at her son, the boy she had protected, the boy she had promoted, the boy she had chosen over me. Mom, Kieran pleaded, tell them it was for the vision. Madeline closed her eyes. Slowly, painfully, she raised her hand. Unanimous, Malcolm said. Kieran, please vacate the premises. Security is waiting. Kieran stood there for a long moment. He looked at the window, then at me. He didn't look devastated. He looked confused, like he genuinely couldn't understand how the narrative had shifted. He was the protagonist. This wasn't supposed to happen to the protagonist. You'll regret this, he muttered. He grabbed his phone, but left his laptop. He walked out the door, passing me without making eye contact. Now, Malcolm said, turning to me, about that rent hike. I have a proposal, I said. I've been in talks with Camilla Vance at Panthalassa Group. She is willing to acquire the resort operations at fair market value, assuming the debts. I will sign a 20-year lease with her at a sustainable rate. The staff keeps their jobs. The brand gets absorbed, but the legacy survives. Panthalassa, Madeline whispered. Our biggest rival? Better a rival than a corpse, I said. Do we have a deal? 2 weeks later, I walked into the Santa Monica Resort. The sign out front was being changed. The Coral Cove letters were coming down, leaving ghostly outlines on the stucco. The new Panthalassa Collection sign was leaning against the wall, ready to go up. I walked through the lobby. It smelled different. I stopped at the front desk. The plastic succulents were gone. In their place was a massive, cascading arrangement of white orchids. Fresh, living, expensive. "Morning, Bridget. I mean, Ms. Hartwick," the concierge said, beaming. "Bridget is fine," I said. I walked to the housekeeping office. The door was open. Rosa was there, folding towels. When she saw me, she dropped the towel. "Bridget!" She ran over and hugged me. It wasn't a professional hug. It was a rib-crushing, desperate hug. They told us we're safe. They gave us our seniority back. "I told you I'd fix it," I whispered into her shoulder. "Mr. Kieran?" She hesitated. "He made a mess." "He's gone, Rosa. It's over." I spent the rest of the day walking the property. I checked the boiler room. Tom had fixed the compressor. I checked the kitchen. Marcus was back, prepping a new menu. I walked into my new office. It wasn't the storage closet, it was the GM's suite, ocean view, a real desk. I placed my grandfather's brass geometer on the shelf. It caught the afternoon sun. I sat down in the chair. It was comfortable. I pulled up the dashboard on my laptop. Occupancy, 92%. Guest satisfaction, trending up. Staff turnover, 0%. I took a deep breath. The phantom limb sensation was gone. I was whole again. I had lost the name, but I had kept the house. Update. 3 months later. Life is strange when the dust settles. The business. The transition to Panthalassa was bumpy but successful. Camilla is a tough boss. She expects perfection, but she listens to logic. I'm the regional director of operations now. I oversee the entire California coast. I have a budget. I have respect. I have a team that would march into hell for me because they know I'd be leading the charge. Kieran. Kieran moved to Scottsdale, Arizona. He's trying to pivot into commercial real estate, specifically strip malls. I heard from a mutual friend that he tells people he exited the family business after a successful buyout. He still posts motivational quotes on LinkedIn about vision and disruption. I blocked him. The family. Madeline is trying. We had dinner last night. Not at a fancy bistro, but at her house. It was just the two of us. She made lasagna. It was burnt on the edges the way she used to make it when we were kids, before she hired a private chef. "I heard Kieran is having trouble with his license application," she said, pouring wine. "Apparently, there's a flag on his record regarding fiduciary misconduct." "Imagine that," I said, taking a sip. "He asked me to ask you." She paused, looking pained. "He needs a character reference. Just something saying his time at Coral Cove was productive." I laughed. It was a dry sound devoid of humor. "He wants me to lie so he can sell strip malls?" "He's your brother," she said automatically. Then she stopped. She looked at me. She remembered the boardroom. She remembered the black binder. "No," she corrected herself. "He's a liability." She poured more wine into my glass. "I told him no," she said. I looked at her, surprised. "I told him that he burned the bridge," Madeline said, her voice shaking slightly, "and that I wasn't going to help him rebuild it this time. I told him to call his father's friends." It wasn't a full apology. It wasn't a time machine, but it was a start. I took a bite of the burnt lasagna. It tasted like charcoal and tomato sauce. It tasted like the truth. "Thanks, Mom," I said. She smiled, a small, fragile thing. "So, tell me about the orchids. Are they thriving?" "They are," I said, "roots and all." If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here, is enough.